Today, we're exploring a side of ancient Greece that Hollywood would have you believe is pure fiction. But it's all too real. Forget the heroic tales of gods and warriors. This episode is all about the darker side of justice in the ancient world. Welcome back, where we dive deep into the fascinating and sometimes terrifying corners of history. Justice in ancient Greece was nothing like what we see today. Forget about fair trials and rehabilitation. This was a time when punishment was as much about public spectacle as it was about enforcing the law. So, buckle up as we count down 6 of the most brutal punishments from ancient Greece. Trust me, some of these are not for the faint of heart. First up, we have ostracism, a punishment that didn't harm the body, but could destroy a life nonetheless. Imagine this. Every year, the citizens of Athens could vote to exile one of their own. No trial, no defense, just a name scratched on a piece of pottery. If enough people agreed, the unlucky person was sent away for 10 years. This wasn't just a punishment, it was political survival. Even the great Athenian general Themistocles, who helped defeat the Persians at the Battle of Salamis, wasn't immune. Suspicion and jealousy led to his ostracism, proving that in ancient Athens, even heroes could be cast out. Ostracism might not have been physically painful, but imagine losing everything: your home, your family, your career, for an entire decade. It was a chilling reminder that no one was above the will of the people, but it also showed how easily mob mentality could upend lives. Now, let's move on to something much more lethal: execution by Hemlock. You might recognize this one from the story of Socrates, the philosopher who was sentenced to death for corrupting the youth of Athens. Hemlock wasn't a quick and painless poison. It worked slowly, shutting down the body inch by inch while the condemned and any spectators watched in horror. Socrates, ever the philosopher, used his final moments to discuss the nature of the soul and death itself. But make no mistake, this was as much a public statement as it was a form of justice. The slow paralysis caused by Hemlock made death an agonizing process. It was a punishment designed to instill fear, both in the condemned and in those watching. The state didn't just want to kill, they wanted to send a message. Punishment 3, Apotympanismos. Next up, we have one of the most excruciating forms of execution, Apotympanismos. Picture this. The condemned is bound to a large wooden board, limbs contorted in unnatural angles, and left out in the elements. There were no nails holding them down, just raw, brutal restraint. As they lay exposed, they faced dehydration, sunstroke, or hypothermia, all while wild animals circled, waiting for their chance. This method wasn't just about ending a life, it was about maximum suffering. The slow, torturous death was a warning to anyone considering treason or other serious crimes. It's a stark reminder of the brutal reality of ancient justice. Punishment 4, throwing from the Tarpan Rock. Imagine being dragged to the edge of a towering cliff, knowing one push could send you hurtling to your death. That's exactly what happened to traitors in ancient Greece who were thrown from the Tarpan Rock. The sheer drop ensured that death was swift, but the terror leading up to that moment was unimaginable. And even after death, the horror didn't end. The bodies were often left exposed as a gruesome reminder of what happens when you betray the city-state. This wasn't just a punishment, it was a public spectacle designed to instill fear. It was a clear message to all: defy the state, and you'll suffer a fate worse than death. Punishment 5, gouging. Gouging is next on our list, a punishment that was more about suffering than simply ending a life. Imagine having your eyes forcibly removed with a sharp instrument, plunging you into permanent darkness. This wasn't just physical pain, it was psychological torture, stripping away a person's autonomy and leaving them to live as a reminder of their crime. One famous example is the Spartan king Pausanias, accused of collaborating with the Persians. He managed to evade execution, but was eventually caught, blinded, and starved to death, a fate almost as cruel as the crime he was accused of. And finally, we come to perhaps the most horrifying punishment of all: death by molten metal. While evidence of this practice is scarce, the very idea is terrifying enough. Imagine molten metal, perhaps bronze or lead, being poured down your throat, burning you from the inside out. The agony would be unimaginable, and death, though swift, would be excruciating. One story involves the Roman general Marcus Licinius Crassus, executed by the Parthians with molten gold, a brutal symbol of his insatiable greed. This method wasn't just about death, it was about utter destruction, both physically and metaphorically. These punishments might seem like something out of a horror movie, but they were very real in ancient Greece. They offer us a glimpse into a time when justice was as much about fear and spectacle as it was about law and order. As brutal as these methods were, they remind us how far we've come, and perhaps how much we still have to learn about the nature of justice. Thanks for joining us on this dark journey through history. If you found this video as fascinating as it was terrifying, don't forget to subscribe, like, and hit the notification bell so you never miss an episode. And let us know in the comments which punishment shocked you the most, or if you've heard of any other gruesome ancient practices we should cover.